Welcome to the Heart of the Matter. Our guest today is Mrs. Funmi Oyetunji. She's a banker, she's an accountant, she's a consultant in financial matters, and latterly she has become an author of the book A Conscious Life. This book is making waves. It's become a must-have book. So stay tuned as we talk with Mrs. Funmi Oyetunji.
These things sometimes are psychological.
I think the financial cost as one of the many
was enormous.
was a God experience. I just wanted to find God.
Simply feeling like you're inspired isn't always so.
Tell us about the solution.
As one
People
of
with
many
18 to 35 years of age start out of work.
Hey, I don't have the skills for this particular problem to solve this particular problem.
None of us talked about the bread seller.
Welcome. As I said, we're talking with Mrs. Funmi Oyetunji. She is a banker, she's an accountant, she's a consultant, she's a director of EcoBank Nigeria Limited, and she's a mother of two people also in the finance, two sons also in the finance world. So it's a pleasure to have you on the Heart of the Matter.
Thank you very much, Pastor.
Now, today the hat we're talking to you under is the hat of author. You've just written a book, or a book has just been released because it took you 5 years in writing, but it's just been released. It's titled A Conscious Life, Navigating Critical Stages and Aspects of Life Successfully. It has got reviewed by Kirkus Review. Now, this is not a small, this is a huge review, and this is what they said about your book. It's a cornucopia of practical wisdoms for responding to life's challenges. So you wrote this book to help people respond to life's challenges. How did it come about? How did A Conscious Life start?
I suppose in raising my own children, I found that a lot of the material, if you can call them that, came from my childhood, especially my grandmother's. And as time went past and I started counseling all the young people, I found out that there didn't seem to be that base of wisdom coming from somewhere in most people. And in thinking about it and worrying, I knew that I couldn't counsel everybody one-on-one. I also wondered that school curriculum actually does not teach us how to grapple with life. We're just there for education and then go on to work. But there are layers and layers of challenges of life and aspects and seasons that one would need help with. So I also saw that in certain cultures, they have systems. For example, the Jewish culture. They have systems of dealing with it when a child comes to 13, comes full of age. And we had it in the African setting also. But I found that today, all of that has fallen off. And a lot of young people are left without much of wisdom and help. So I started mentioning it to a few friends. And it started like a thread. Maybe I should write a book about these things. And people took me seriously and started asking, when are you going to start this book? So I started.
See, because the book covers such a wide variety of things. You're talking about parenting, you're talking about marriage, you're talking about finance. So naturally you must have had a lot of exposure to these things, and that's what has motivated you to write.
I think there's a time one is prepared enough to do certain things. I think it's the fact that, the fact that I started writing in my sixth generation or, after my 50s meant that a lot of the things I covered, I had lived through and I have practical knowledge about. And generally, I've always been also a learning person. If you went through the book, you'd see a lot of, I use self-help books and I read philosophy. So generally, I was a prepared person from my own point of view. I am the kind of person that would go and seek help and look for help in words, mostly in preparing a thing. When I had my children, I had a shelf full books on parenting and child rearing. And so for each thing, I kind of taught myself also, apart from what I got from my grandmothers.
Well, this is not a self-help book in the frame of other self-help books, because this is born of a lot of practical experience and so on. Now, it was 5 years in writing. How come?
That's because for anybody who's not, I'm a chartered accountant, I'm a finance person. For anybody who writing is not their main job or mainstay, you would find out that you're distracted now and again. You would start and then you'd be distracted. Then it got to a point, you start off trying to write a book, at least that's what happened to me. I thought it was a matter of a year I would have done, but as I went in to each topic, the need to bring the necessary help in that topic meant that I then had to go back for further research. I mean, for the marriage chapter, I read a whole book. For the aging chapter, I read a philosophy book. So as I wrote, a bit of perfectionist in me, as I wrote, I kind of taxed myself further and wanted to write something that I would always be proud of and would not wonder why I didn't do it better. So it just became a bigger project, so to say, over time. And I think the timeline also helped me, because you find out that timelines change your perspectives and open your perspectives wider sometimes.
So you found yourself going back to the book over and over again to refine some of the things and so on. What's your favorite chapter in the book?
If you read the preface, I didn't say one. I just said that I had a bias about certain aspects of life that I think are very, very important, but which sometimes, you must remember I'm in the finance world and I know how finance is so important to everybody. And even in the book I said money answereth many things. But I believe that a conscious life, a good life, a fulfilled life has all those other layers and aspects of life that we all imagine are the soft issues, but that can actually affect a life. So I would say I have a few. Of course, money was one of them because I am just qualified to write about it. Marriage, parenting, relationships, family and friendships were areas that I think a lot of people miss it. And I believe those things are the crux of a lot of things that happen in life, like what you like to talk about, generations. It starts with who you marry, what you do with your children, and how you approach aging. So those are the three that form a thread in what I think can be very important.
So the all-important question, what is a conscious life?
To make it very simple, because we can talk about, the philosophers say that a life that is not well considered is not worth living. Having a consideration of what you're doing, being conscious of the effect of your actions, your speeches, and consciously directing them to the kind of end and outcome you require or desire is what is called a conscious life. It means it's a life that has been considered and thought through. So you're
taking deliberate steps.
Deliberate steps with intentions.
Now, why is it a problem? Why do people need to live a conscious life?
In the first chapter, I talk about a vision for life, and I start talking about, people just going from day to day. Many listeners and many of us know that we all joke about where have all those years gone? And it rings true most of the time. I find that it's a small proportion of us that don't have those regrets. Because when people say, where have the years gone? Part of it is coming from a feeling of regret. It's all gone, days gone. And a lot of people make those comments as they approach middle age. And I start thinking about middle age from, say, 40, when a lot of all the decisions that would affect your life fundamentally, the times have passed, and you're beginning to believe that it's getting a bit late. So it's to ensure that you don't get to that stage where you wonder.
So you
why.
just wake up in the morning and go with the flow.
A lot of people do. And then and apart from going with the flow, there are two things. We also tend to be reactional to life. So we wake up, something has happened, a husband has done something, or a child has done something, or you get to the office and you basically spend the whole day reacting to that. So that's reacting to, people can live in a reacting manner. But what we're saying is be awake, know what you're trying to achieve, and no matter how slowly, know that you're rolling towards your outcomes, the outcomes you desire, rather than wake up every day, spend the day just living and not knowing. We evolve. Each of us evolve each day. By each day, we change. Each of us, we're not who we were 6 months ago because we've had experiences. However, what are those experiences? Are those experiences dictated by our need? How many books did I read? How many things in my vision did I tick off in those 6 months? So that's the whole point, not just to live without a plan, without a vision, and without awakeness. I like Kirkus review, part of their review statement said, that I have written to encourage people to keep awake in living the life they want.
So a conscious life is also a disciplined life, because you need to impose discipline upon yourself to live a conscious life. Viewers, we're going to come back in a moment. We're just taking a short break, so stay tuned to the Heart of the Matter. Welcome back to the Heart of the Matter, where we're talking with Mrs. Funmi Oyetunji about the book, A Conscious Life, Navigating Critical Stages and Aspects of Life Successfully. Funmi, you've got many chapters in this book, and every single chapter is full of nuggets of wisdom. It's a book I have read, and some of our crew have read it as well. But let's pick on the chapter on finance. What are the problems that you wanted to address in writing that chapter on finance?
I'm usually surprised to see that a lot of people just don't understand finance and don't approach it. And I think a lot of people don't do anything about their finances because they lack the knowledge, and then they are kind of worried they won't know how to do it, and so they just ignore it. The worst thing anybody can do about finances is to ignore it. I have found that it is actually quite easy to live an orderly financial life, for your finances to be orderly. The problem is that people just don't have those basic knowledge. Just like I said about life, finance is not something that is taught in school. And the group CEO of Stanbic IBTC, Mrs. Bora, when she was asked to read her favorite part of the book, she had said that this is a chapter that ought to be included in curriculum. Basically because money affects all of us.
Absolutely.
Like I said in the chapter, money answers many things. I went to a program recently and they said, write down the first 10 most important things to you. Of course, I was approaching it from money. We don't need money for everything. The best things in life, it's not bought with money. So I got 5. I wrote 5 things. But the speaker then led us to realize that even those things that we imagine are free, that are emotional, they need money for you to let them happen. One of the things in mine was communication with my family, my husband and my children on a daily basis was very important to me. But then I need data to talk to my children where they are. I need a good phone to do it. So you find out that money affects almost every aspect of our lives. There is no chapter there
Yeah,
that money does not affect one way or the other, even in our old age. So it is actually quite, would be irresponsible for anybody not to do what they can to learn about finance. And like I said, you do not have to become a chartered accountant. Just get the knowledge, read about it, and when you get to the point where you know you can't do anything about it, you can get help.
What are the practical things that people need to know about finance? Just living a shrewd or careful life financially.
The first thing is discipline. Money, I see a lot of people and it's like money has them at the end of a rope and is throwing them around. One of the things I say in the chapter, when we discuss finance and money, the first thing people think about is that they want to become rich. They want to become wealthy. But if you ask them why and what is wealth to them, what do they consider? How would they consider themselves to be? What do they think they would be like if they were wealthy? All they're talking about, Pastor, is having the ability to spend and spend and spend. So while most people in their own minds want to get wealthy, the reason they do not become wealthy is that mindset that is not wealth creating. And creating wealth starts, like we said, from discipline. There are two aspects of money. There is what we call the personal finance planning, which is basically saying make do with what you have, save from your income, begin to create a base so that you become financially independent. Either on your salary or on your business, you become financially independent. You can keep yourself from month to month. You don't have to borrow. You are not owing just by living. Okay? Of course, I'm not saying...
But that discipline involves budgeting.
Yes. You see, Pastor, my problem, one of the reasons I wrote the book is that when we start using words like that, people just go, no, I'm not a finance person, I don't want to talk about that. But what is budgeting? Just everybody listening from today, get an exercise book and begin to write what you spend money on for a month. Just begin to write what you spend your money on for a month. It should show you what is needful, what you cannot do without, like food, your children's fees. It will show you all those things that you just spend money on because there's suggestive selling around you. A few people come to church, and while you're walking away, somebody walks up to you, oh, I'm selling this and I'm selling that, and before you know it, you're buying things you didn't leave home thinking you needed. So you might find out after recording your spendings in the month, all that a high percentage could actually be things that you don't need and you're spending money on. And I say to people, money is not supposed to be what we're actually chasing. We should be chasing a lifestyle. If you had a vision for your life, it's very easy not to spend money in an irresponsible manner. Because the first chapter in the book is about vision for life. I say in the book, one of the problems that we have as Nigerians is that we think it's derogatory. For example, to say, I can't afford it. Mm-hmm. Saying you can't afford something does not make you smaller than the next man. It might just be because you're wiser, because your priorities are different, because you have a plan and you're working towards that plan, and that plan could be savings. And so when you say you can't afford it, you're basically saying, my plan and my vision does not include this thing you're asking me to spend money on. I, Mrs. Oyetunji, can actually say, when there is some kind of ashoebi, I can say, I can't afford it. When I say I can't afford it, doesn't mean I cannot pay for that. But I joke with people, My wardrobe will not, contain some of these things. When I wear it once, I don't get a chance to wear it again. So I end up after like 3 months giving clothes that I've worn once out. If I were to price that, if I was to cost that, I would rather, I have found, because I actually run a foundation, granting scholarships. I have found, I joke now, when people say that Ashwebi, I just go, that's half of the budget of one child in university in the year. So if I say I can't afford that Ashwebi, I mean I have a better use of that money and it doesn't fall into my plan.
There's a problem, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, that parents shouldn't try to live vicariously through their child.
Yes.
So I wanted to be a doctor. I never could be a doctor, so I want to compel my children to be doctors. But then as parents still has that responsibility to help their child actually fulfill the destiny. Now, in your experience parenting, tell us what are the most outstanding qualities that you would find in a parent?
The most outstanding quality in a parent is attention and sacrifice.
I like that. Now, sacrifice. Tell us about sacrifice, because, I don't know if many parents are very sacrificial when it comes to their children.
Yeah. First of all, Pastor, attention. You realize I didn't say money, because a lot of people throw money at raising children rather than pay attention.
Okay.
So attention is the most important, because you said we don't want to live vicariously from our children. We need to pay attention to see who they are, different each one, and how you can help them to be the best they have been created to be. Now, sacrifice. The time it takes to pay attention to your child, to spend time with your child, to spend that hour with them with homework, the time it takes for you to notice something is wrong with your child and you actually find out what it is and work on it. I gave an example in the book, and I like to give it here, because a lot of people did say to me, I spoke once and somebody said, you must let people know that you did that kind of thing, because a lot of people see me as professional and my career had always been important in my 30-something years in career work. But my first son, who is in his 30s now, there was a time I was working in the UK. I was working in the practice of KPMG, and this child I was sending to a fee-paying school, and I had an arrangement after school such that a family picked him from school. And I thought I had the perfect arrangement. Then all of a sudden, each morning when I was preparing my son for school, he just started crying in this very heartbreaking way. And it wasn't because he didn't want to go to school. He was crying for the after-school arrangement. So he was crying in the morning for what will happen when school finished. So, the natural reaction at that time was that I was in a hurry. I wanted to go to work and, And so I spoke to him and, what is it and everything. My son was an only child at the time. I hadn't had my second. He was staying with a family with 5 children after school. So I had raised my child to watch certain kinds of educative programs on TV after school. But they watched whatever they liked. And so after school, they basically just voted him out of what to watch. His votes didn't count. And so he didn't watch his educative programs as I had raised him to do. And so this became something he couldn't bear and was very unhappy about. So I thought about it. And I decided that for this child, at this stage, something had to give. So I went to my employers and I said, my child is unhappy, but I don't want to give up work. I know there's nobody in this group that is working part-time. But if you allow me, you could try me out for 3 months, let me work part-time. In fact, I was so afraid that I didn't share this with my husband before going to ask for this permission, because I had prayed and I kind of didn't want a conversation that would weaken my resolve to do it. So I went to my employers. My senior manager at the time, he's still a family friend. He takes the same boy, Abioye, in fact, Abioye takes him to lunch now and again now. And I went to him and I said, this is the problem. My son is unhappy. I have work in me to give you, but I need to close at 3. So I would be at the gate, school gate, at 3:30. And he said, let me think about it. And then when I came back to him after a week, he made a joke. I had just been promoted. I had a company car. So he said, so what are we going to do with your company car? Remove some of the wheels. So I said, you know, I don't mind giving up the car. And then he went to speak to the partner, and in a week they came back, and I was allowed to work part-time. Now, is that a sacrifice I'm calling on everybody to make? I believe each situation is different. Is that a sacrifice that probably has affected the outcome of my son's life? Probably. Was that a sacrifice I was willing to make at that time? The business of parenting has always been important to me. It was a sacrifice I was willing to make. I kept the job. I got to the school gate at 3:30, and you had never seen a happier child. So there are times in our lives that sacrifice will be called upon for our children. And I think we ought to approach that very seriously.
It's been such a wonderful opportunity to learn more. Viewers, this book is available in Nigeria. You can get it at bookstores.
At Quintessence, Latana, and Terra Culture. You can also get it from Guiding Light Assembly bookshop. You can follow me also on Funmi_Oyetunji on Twitter, and Funmi1957 Instagram. And information about the book is always available there. For those of you who buy online, it is available online on Amazon, and you can buy both a physical copy and an e-copy online from Amazon.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
We'll put all those details on the screen for you. It's been such a pleasure having you again on The Heart of the Matter, but this time as an author. So we are looking forward to the next book. Take your time. We're looking forward to the next book. And again, on The Heart of the Matter, to have to dip into your great knowledge and insight, both in finances and all. So thanks ever so much for coming.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Viewers, I'm sure you've been blessed by this episode. We'll be back again next week with another episode of The Heart of the Matter. Until then, stay blessed.